Wild Advisory gives growing organizations enterprise-grade expertise without enterprise-grade cost. And most companies don't fail because they lack ideas. They fail because they can't find the right experts fast enough. I assemble from my network the relevant experts that can help to solve that specific problem, and I only get those people at the time that the client needs them. My business exists for this type of response, which comes from Stephen a few months ago, where after a workshop, Stephen took me aside privately and said, "I can't believe the quality of the people that you've introduced to us." And this conversation between Stephen and I began over a year ago, where over a cup of coffee we talked about the planning process in his team, and he wanted to automate his cash flow forecasting. And so we looked at that, but the real problem behind that was a finance team that inundated with spreadsheets instead of spending time thinking and shaping decisions in the organization. And what did we do? Well, of course, we automated the planning process, integrated it, and gave his team their thinking time back. Automation is almost always step number one in client engagements. When I get introduced into a new client, it's normally the place that we start. And there's good reason for that. That is because you cannot be strategic while you are doing admin. Secondly, any growing organization faces this exact pain point of needing to automate processes. And of course, once companies see the benefit of automating one process, then of course they want to automate all processes across the organization in the same way. The second challenge that came from Stephen was when we talked about the South African law that had changed around donations to organizations. And effectively what it did is it set a cap of 100,000 Rand. Anybody giving more than that would be on a public roll. And of course, wealthy donors often want to remain anonymous. And so this created a challenge for the organization. And the requirement was to go much wider in their reach to request donations from the broader South African public. And so that was the challenge that we looked at. And we didn't, in the workshop, we didn't just sit around the table designing a solution. We built an incredible chemistry in that very first workshop meeting where I introduced 4 businesses. In fact, all 4 were from BNI. And there was electricity in the room. It was incredible. It was a fantastic meeting, and you can tell when it's good because people start swapping numbers before the end of the meeting. And what have we done and what are we doing is we're using POPIA compliant data to enrich a longer list of potential donors so that Stephen's team can reach out to people in a way that is going to quadruple their success at receiving donations. So that's the goal with this project. And then, of course, the journey carried on, and Stephen's already let the cat out of the bag with what he said in his 1 minute, is that the big strategic goal for this year is to win Gauteng. And for that to happen, that depends on all of their normal machinery happening in the organization. But once it happens, that creates a huge challenge because now they need to stretch the organization to cover government roles as well as keep the organization running. And so that's the next challenge that we're going to be looking at. And that is essentially going to be looking at how do you keep the operations of head office running using technology and using people strategically to ensure that with a potentially reduced head office, you can still run the organization just as effectively. So, in summary, what does my typical engagement in an organization look like? It begins with efficiency. It then moves to insight around data and providing insights to the organization that they didn't see or understand previously. And then finally, matures in transformation of the organization. So,
We help leaders whose problem is bigger than their team.
so don't ask who needs consulting. Ask the question, who needs the right expert? So Wild Advisory is simple. We curate solutions using experts at exactly the right time, in the right way, and we do it right every single time.